What happens when a beloved television presenter is publicly humiliated on live television by a host who refuses to listen? In just 48 seconds, one cutting remark would turn a routine morning chat into the most shocking exit in daytime TV history. Nick Knowles walked onto the Lorraine Kelly show set that morning, expecting a friendly conversation about his latest charity work. The DIYSOS presenter had spent months helping families rebuild their lives. And he was there to share those heartwarming stories with the viewers at home. But what should have been a celebration of kindness was about to become something very different. Lorraine Kelly sat behind her desk, flanked by regular panelists Christine Lampard and Ranveer Singh. The studio lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and everything seemed normal. Nick settled into his seat with a warm smile, ready to talk about the families he'd helped. He had no idea what was coming. "So Nick," Lorraine began, her tone already carrying an edge that made Christine shift uncomfortably in her seat. "You're here to talk about your charity work. How very noble of you." The sarcasm was impossible to miss. Nick's smile faltered slightly, but he pressed on. "Well, it's not about being noble, Lorraine. It's about helping people who really need it. We've just finished a project for a family whose home was damaged by flooding, and—" "Yes, yes," Lorraine interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "But let's talk about what people really want to know. Your personal life, your relationships, the drama." Nick's expression shifted from confusion to mild frustration. "Actually, Lorraine, I'd prefer to focus on the work. These families have incredible stories, and—" "Oh, come on," Lorraine cut in again, leaning forward with a smirk. "Nobody tunes in to hear about building work. They want the gossip. They want to know about your love life, your failures, the controversies." Ranveer Singh glanced at Christine, both women clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. Ranveer tried to intervene. "Lorraine, maybe we should let Nick tell us about the project. It sounds really inspiring." But Lorraine wasn't having it. "Ranveer, please. I'm conducting this interview." She turned back to Nick, her eyes narrowing. "You know what I think, Nick. I think you use this charity work as a shield, a way to make yourself look good while avoiding the real questions." The studio fell silent. Even the crew members behind the cameras seemed frozen. Nick took a slow breath, his jaw tightening. "That's completely unfair, Lorraine. These families opened their homes to us, trusted us with their stories. This isn't about me looking good. It's about shining a light on people who deserve help." "Oh, how touching," Lorraine said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The big TV star coming to save the day. Do you ever wonder if maybe you're just doing this for the publicity? For the pat on the back?" Christine Lampard finally spoke up, her voice firm. "Lorraine, that's out of line. Nick has been doing this work for years, long before it was trendy." But Lorraine shot Christine a look that could freeze water. "I don't remember asking for your opinion, Christine." Nick leaned forward, his voice steady, but his anger barely contained. "You know what? Lorraine, I came here in good faith. I came here to share stories about real people facing real struggles. A single mother who lost everything in a flood. A veteran who couldn't afford to fix his roof. These are the stories that matter." "How convenient," Lorraine snapped back. "You get to play the hero, and they get their 15 minutes of fame on your show. Sounds like a fair trade to me." "It's not a trade," Nick said, his voice rising slightly. "It's not transactional. But these are human beings, not props for a television program." Lorraine laughed, actually laughed, and it was a cold sound that made everyone in the studio cringe. "Oh, please, Nick. Everything on television is transactional. You know it. I know it. Stop pretending you're some sort of saint." Ranveer tried again to calm things down. "Maybe we should take a quick break and—" "No," Lorraine said sharply. "We're not taking a break. Nick came here to talk, so let's talk. Let's talk about how you've built an entire career on being the nice guy, the helpful guy. But I wonder, Nick, who's the real you? when the cameras aren't rolling, are you actually this perfect, or is it all just an act? Nick stood up slowly, his microphone still clipped to his shirt. The gesture was calm, controlled, but everyone could see the fury in his eyes. I don't have to sit here and be insulted, Lorraine. I came here to do something positive, to highlight work that matters. And you've turned it into a circus. Sit down, Nick, Lorraine commanded, her voice suddenly icy. We're not done here. Yes, Nick said quietly, but firmly. We are. Christine stood up too, her face flushed with anger at her colleague. Lorraine, you need to apologize. This is completely unprofessional. But Lorraine wasn't backing down. She stood as well, her face red, her finger pointing at Nick. You don't walk out on my show. Who do you think you are? I'm someone who respects people, Nick said, his voice carrying across the studio. I'm someone who believes that when you invite a guest onto your program, you treat them with basic human decency, something you clearly know nothing about. The camera operators didn't know where to point their lenses. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to figure out what to do. This was live television, and it was falling apart in real time. Lorraine's voice turned shrill. You're making a huge mistake, Nick. You walk out of here, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Arrogant, self-righteous, too good for a simple interview. Nick started to unclip his microphone, his movements deliberate and calm despite the chaos around him. You can say whatever you want about me, Lorraine, but the families I've helped, they know the truth. And honestly, and that's all that matters to me. Those families, Lorraine spat the words out like they tasted bad. You think they actually care about you? You're just a means to an end for them. A free renovation and a spot on TV. That was the moment. That single comment. Nick froze, his microphone halfway off his shirt. He turned back to Lorraine, and his voice when he spoke was like ice. How dare you? How dare you speak about people you've never met? People who've been through hell and back. Like they're somehow using me. These are good people who've faced unimaginable hardship, and they deserve better than your bitter, cynical view of the world. Ranveer was on her feet now, too, her hand on Nick's arm. Nick, it's okay. Just go. You don't need this. But Lorraine wasn't finished. Oh, that's right. Run away, Nick. Run away like you always do when things get tough. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Building houses, but running from real conversations. Christine stepped between them, her voice loud and clear. Lorraine, stop it. Just stop. This is embarrassing. For you. For all of us. Get out of my way, Christine, Lorraine hissed. Nick finished removing his microphone and placed it carefully on the chair he'd been sitting in. I'm leaving now, not because I'm running away, but because I refuse to participate in whatever this is. You invited me here under false pretenses. And you've spent the entire time trying to tear me down instead of having an actual conversation. False pretenses? Lorraine's voice was getting louder with every word. I invited you here to do a job, to answer questions, to be interesting. But all you want to do is bang on about your precious charity work like it makes you better than everyone else. I never said it makes me better than anyone, Nick replied, his voice steady. But it definitely makes me better than this. Better than sitting here while you insult me. Insult the people I've worked with, and turn what should be a positive story into your personal vendetta against what exactly? What have I ever done to you, Lorraine? The question hung in the air. Lorraine's mouth opened and closed, but for a moment, she had no answer. Christine and Ranveer watched her, waiting to see if she would finally back down, finally show some shred of professionalism or humanity. Instead, Lorraine's face hardened even more. What have you done? You've come onto my show with your holier-than-thou attitude, acting like you're above the normal questions every other guest has to answer. You think because you hammer a few nails and paint a few walls that you're special? No, Nick said, and there was genuine sadness in his voice now. I don't think I'm special. I think the work is important. I think the people we help deserve to have their stories told with respect and dignity. And I think you've completely lost sight of what this job is supposed to be about. A producer finally ran onto the set, trying to usher people toward a commercial break, but it was too late. The damage was done, and everyone knew it. Lorraine pointed toward the exit. Fine. Get out. Get off my set. Security. I don't need security, Nick said calmly. I'm leaving on my own. But before I go, I want everyone watching at home to know something. The work we do on DIYSOS isn't about me. It's never been about me. It's about communities coming together to help their neighbors. It's about showing kindness in a world that sometimes feels like it's running short on it. And if that's not what daytime television wants to talk about, then maybe I'm on the wrong shows. He turned to Christine and Ranveer. Thank you both for trying. I appreciate it. Both women nodded. Christine with tears in her eyes. Ranveer with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Nick walked toward the exit, his head high, his shoulders back. Behind him, Lorraine was shouting something about professionalism and contracts and how he'd never work in television again. The crew members stepped aside to let him pass, several of them giving him sympathetic looks or quiet words of support. Just before he reached the door that would take him off the set and away from the cameras, Nick turned back one last time. The whole studio was watching him, waiting to see what he would say. You know, Lorraine, he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the distance. I've met a lot of people in this job. People who've lost everything. People who've been knocked down by life over and over again. And you know what I've learned? The people who've been through the most tend to be the kindest. They know what it's like to struggle, so they lift others up instead of tearing them down. Maybe you should think about that. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than all of Lorraine's shouting. The studio was silent. Lorraine stood there, her chest heaving, her face flushed, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. Christine and Ranveer remained standing, neither of them looking at their host. Well, Lorraine finally said, her voice shaky, I think we all saw the real Nick Knowles there, didn't we? Can't handle a few tough questions? So he throws a tantrum and storms off. Christine slowly turned to face her. Lorraine, you need to stop talking. Right now. Excuse me? Lorraine's eyes widened. You heard me, Christine said, her voice quiet but firm. What you just did was cruel and unnecessary. That man came here to talk about helping people, and you attacked him for no reason. And now you're trying to spin it like he's the problem? No, absolutely not. Ranveer nodded in agreement. She's right, Lorraine. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've never seen a host treat a guest like that. Ever. Lorraine looked between them, her expression shifting from anger to something like panic. You're both overreacting. This is television. Sometimes interviews get heated. It's good TV. No, Christine said firmly. Good TV is interesting, engaging, maybe even challenging. What you just did was bullying, plain and simple. The producer was frantically gesturing from off camera and trying to get them to cut to commercial to end this disaster before it got any worse. But Lorraine seemed incapable of stopping herself. He disrespected me, she said, her voice rising again. He came on my show and disrespected me by refusing to answer my questions. Your questions? Ranveer's voice was incredulous. You didn't ask questions, Lorraine. You made accusations. You insulted his work, his character, even the people he's helped. What did you expect him to do? Just sit there and take it? Yes, Lorraine shot back. That's what guests do. They sit and they answer questions, even if they don't like them. Christine shook her head slowly. You really don't get it, do you? You don't see anything wrong with what you just did. Of course I don't, Lorraine said, crossing her arms defensively. I was doing my job. I was being a journalist. Journalism isn't about tearing people down, Ranveer said. It's about seeking truth. What about having meaningful conversations? What you did today had nothing to do with journalism. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every word, every expression. The viewers at home were watching this secondary drama unfold, seeing the cracks in the perfect daytime television facade. Lorraine's voice dropped to something dangerous. You two need to remember whose show this is. I built this program. Me. And I can have either of you replaced in a heartbeat. The threat hung in the air. We're ugly and raw. Christine picked up her own microphone and began to remove it, just as Nick had done minutes before. You know what, Lorraine? I don't think I want to be part of a show where guests are treated like that, where kindness is mocked and charity work is dismissed as attention-seeking. Don't you dare, Lorraine warned. Don't you dare walk off this set. But Christine was already standing, already unhooking the small battery pack from her waistband. I dare, Lorraine. Say, I absolutely dare. Because unlike you, I still remember why we do this job. It's supposed to be about connecting with people, about sharing stories that matter, about making viewers feel something other than secondhand embarrassment. Ranveer stood as well, though she didn't remove her microphone. Instead, she looked directly into the nearest camera. To everyone watching at home, I want to apologize. What you just witnessed was not okay. Nick Knowles is a good man who does incredible work, and he didn't deserve any of that. Ranveer, sit down, Lorraine commanded. No, Ranveer said simply. I don't think I will. The producer finally managed to cut to commercial, but not before millions of viewers had witnessed the complete meltdown of what was supposed to be a simple morning chat show. The screens in homes across the country went dark, replaced by advertisements for laundry detergent and life insurance, a jarring contrast to the raw emotion they'd just witnessed. But back on set, the confrontation continued, even with the cameras off. You've both just ended your careers, Lorraine said, her voice shaking with rage. You understand that, don't you? Nobody walks out on me. Nobody defies me on my own show. Your show? Christine laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Lorraine, this stopped being your show the moment you forgot it was about the guests, the viewers, the stories. Now it's just about your ego. Security guards were approaching now, though they seemed uncertain about what exactly they were supposed to be doing. The producer was on his phone, probably calling executives, trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. Lorraine turned to the producer. Get them out of here, both of them, and make sure Nick Knowles never sets foot in this building again. I don't think you have the authority to make that call anymore, Christine said quietly. Not after today. And she was right. Even as they stood there arguing, social media was exploding. Viewers who'd been watching live were posting clips, sharing their outrage, demanding answers. The hashtags were already trending. The court of public opinion was in session, and Lorraine Kelly was very much on trial. But in that moment, standing on the set, surrounded by confused crew members and angry colleagues, Lorraine still didn't seem to understand what she'd done. She still thought she was in the right, that she'd been justified in her treatment of Nick. He should have answered my questions, she said again, as if repeating it would somehow make it true. He tried, Ranveer said, her voice heavy with disappointment. He tried to talk about his work, about the families he's helped, about the positive impact they're making. But you wouldn't let him. You just kept pushing and pushing until he had no choice but to leave. He had a choice, Lorraine insisted. He chose to be difficult. Christine shook her head one final time. No. Lorraine, he chose to have dignity, and that's something you lost today. The commercial break would end soon. Someone would have to go back on camera and try to continue the show as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew that was impossible. Everything had changed in those 48 seconds when Lorraine made that cutting remark about the families Nick had helped. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. Nick Knowles was already in his car, driving away from the studio, his phone buzzing with messages of support. He'd stood up for himself, for his values, for the people he'd dedicated years of his life to helping. He'd walked away with his integrity intact. Back on set, as the countdown to going live again began, Lorraine Kelly sat behind her desk, trying to compose herself, trying to figure out how to explain what had just happened. But there was no explanation that would make it okay. There were no words that could undo what millions of people had seen with their own eyes. The lights came back up, the cameras started rolling, and Lorraine Kelly had to face the consequences of her own actions, live and unfiltered for all the world to see.